The chandelier throws sharp diamonds of light across the Persian rug. That same rug I brought back from Istanbul in 1989, rolled under my arm like a smuggled treasure. The customs officer had raised an eyebrow at me, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a fierce grip on her luggage, and asked if I had anything to declare. I looked him straight in the face and said only that I'd brought home a piece of a country I would never see again. He waved me through. I think he understood. My late husband, Thomas, had laughed at me in the arrivals hall, asking what I needed another rug for. We already had 3, he said. 4 if you counted the small one in the bathroom. I told him a woman needs things that remember her. He stopped laughing after that. He kissed my forehead instead and called me his little philosopher. Then he carried the rug to the car without another word, because that was the kind of man he was. He has been gone 8 years now. 8 years of empty chairs and half-empty coffee cups and the strange silence that falls over a house when the loudest heartbeat stops. But the rug remains. The walls remain. The crown molding I painted myself during a heat wave in July remains. Each brushstroke a small act of defiance against a world that kept telling me to hire a man to do it. My arm ached for a week afterward, but every time I look up, I see my own handiwork, and I smile. But nothing else feels mine anymore. I stand by the fireplace, my hands clasped behind my back. The embers crackle low, orange veins pulsing like a dying heart. The heat touches my shins, but does not reach the rest of me. I have been cold for a long time now, not from the weather, from the slow, quiet way I have been erased from my own life, room by room, photograph by photograph, memory by memory. Across the room, my daughter-in-law, Lisa, paces in front of the marble mantelpiece. Her blonde hair catches the firelight, and her heels click against the hardwood. Each step drives a tiny nail into something I cannot yet name, but I feel every single one. She is wearing a cream-colored sweater that costs more than my first car. I know because I saw the receipt on the kitchen counter last week, left there like a trophy. She also left out the receipt for the new curtains she bought without asking my opinion, and the receipt for the landscaping she had done to rip out the rose bushes Thomas planted the year Mark was born. She says I do not listen. She says I never listen. Her voice is clipped and polished, the voice of a woman who has fired 3 nannies and 2 interior decorators and never once said please to any of them. She tells me I am impossible, that I am stubborn, that I live in the past like it is a furnished apartment with no intention of ever moving out. I say nothing. I learned long ago that silence is the loudest response. Thomas taught me that. He was a man of few words, but the ones he used landed like stones in still water. He once told me that the person who speaks first in an argument has already lost something. Maybe their dignity, maybe their advantage, maybe just the chance to be heard instead of merely responding. I never forgot that. Lisa stops pacing and turns to face me fully. The firelight catches the diamond on her finger. My late husband's mother's diamond, the one Thomas placed in my palm the night he proposed, his hands shaking as he told me it had been in the family for 100 years, through wars and depressions and a fire that took half their belongings. He said it was not the most expensive thing he owned, but it was the most precious because it had survived, because it had been worn by women who did not give up. Lisa does not know any of that. She thinks it is just a rock, just another line item on an insurance appraisal. She wears it to brunch and to the gym and to bed for all I know. I once saw her drop it in the sink while doing dishes and not even flinch. I have never said a word about it. Until tonight, I have never said a word about anything. She tells me she needs the nursery. The guest room upstairs, she says, is going to be the baby's room, which means my little sewing nook on the main floor has to go. She says it like she is announcing the weather. Matter of fact, no room for negotiation. She has already bought the crib, she adds. It is being delivered on Tuesday. I blink. Nook. The room with the garden window where I have spent 1,000 afternoons hemming Mark's school trousers, stitching Thomas's work shirts, mending the lace curtains Lisa tore last Christmas when she yanked them open to let some light in for once. That room is smaller than a walk-in closet, but it has northern light that falls like honey across the floor from morning until mid-afternoon. I have grown rosemary in the window box there for 20 years. The rosemary was a cutting from my mother's plant, which was a cutting from her mother's plant. It is older than I am. I tell her the sewing nook is the only room with northern light. I say it quietly, the way you might remind a child that the stove is hot. I say it without anger, without accusation, just a simple statement of fact. She tells me to open a curtain somewhere else. Her lips press into a thin, satisfied line, and she crosses her arms beneath her chest. The diamond catches the light again, and for a moment I see my mother-in-law's face in my memory. She was a hard woman, but she was fair. She would have taken Lisa by the shoulders and sat her down and explained how the world actually works. She would have told her that a house is not a decoration, it is a history. I am not as brave as she was, but I am learning. Lisa says this is her house now and her rules. Her voice rises on the word her, and the chandelier seems to tremble with it. She says I am just a guest here, and guests do not get to make demands. The words hang in the air like smoke. They curl around the furniture and seep into the curtains and settle on my shoulders like a shroud. I feel them pressing down, but I do not stoop. My son, Mark, sits on the leather sofa, the same sofa Thomas and I bought at an estate sale in 1995. The leather is cracked in places, and one of the cushions sags in the middle, but we never replaced it because Thomas said it had finally learned the shape of us. He used to fall asleep on that sofa every Sunday afternoon, the newspaper spread across his chest, snoring softly while the football game played on the television. I would cover him with a blanket and let him sleep until dinner. Mark is scrolling through his phone. His thumb moves upward and downward in a mindless rhythm, up and down, like a metronome counting out the seconds of his silence. The blue light from the screen illuminates his face, casting shadows under his eyes. He looks older than his 34 years. He looks tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. He has not looked at me once since I walked in from the kitchen, not once. I say his name, just once, quietly. He flinches. His thumb stops moving. The phone goes dark. When he looks up, his eyes are tired and apologetic, but weak, so terribly weak. I see Thomas in his jawline and his cheekbones and the way his hair falls across his forehead. But the spine, that came from my side, and somewhere along the way, he seems to have misplaced it. Maybe Lisa has it in her purse. Maybe he gave it to her as a wedding gift, wrapped in ribbon and handed over with a smile. He suggests moving my sewing machine to the basement. His voice is small, almost a whisper. He says it would only be temporary, just until the baby is older, just until they figure something else out. The basement, where the furnace hums and the pipes weep and the concrete floor stays cold even in August, where Thomas used to keep his workbench before the arthritis took his hands, where I found him one afternoon sitting on an overturned bucket crying because he could not hold a screwdriver anymore. That basement has seen enough sorrow. It does not need my sewing machine. It does not need my mother's memory. Then Lisa snaps her fingers, actually snaps at me. The sound cuts through the room like a whip, sharp and percussive and meant to startle. It is the same sound I used to make to call the dog when I was a girl, the same sound you make to get the attention of a servant. She asks if I am even listening, and before I can answer, she screams it. She throws her arms wide and gestures at the vaulted ceilings, the wainscoting, the bay window where I used to read to Mark when he was small, his head heavy on my shoulder, his breath warm against my neck. He would fall asleep there sometimes, and I would hold him long after the story ended, just to feel his heart beating against mine. She says she decorated it and paid for the renovation and hosted every holiday while I sat in the corner like a ghost. Her voice is venomous now, each word a small dagger. She says she is the one who made this house beautiful. She is the one who dragged it out of the past and into the present. I was just living in a museum, she says, too stubborn to see that the world had moved on without me. Her face flushes, and the tendons in her neck stand out like cables. She says she is tired of tiptoeing around me, tired of my old furniture and my old ways and my old house. She says she is tired of being grateful for something that was never really given, just loaned. She screams it again, louder this time, her voice breaking on the last word. The veins in her throat pulse. Her eyes are wild. This is her house. The echo bounces off the hardwood and fades into the corners, into the rafters, into the bones of the house itself. A small piece of dust drifts down from the chandelier. The fire pops, sending a single ember onto the hearth, where it glows orange for a moment before dying. Mark looks down at his phone again. His thumb resumes its motion, up and down, up and down, up and down. I take a breath. Slow and deliberate, the kind of breath you take before you step off a cliff you have been standing on for 3 years. I feel my heart beating against my ribs, not from fear, but from something older, something that feels like justice winding its clockwork, something that feels like my mother-in-law nodding from wherever she is now. I think about all the nights I lay awake, wondering if I should say something, wondering if I should show the document sooner, wondering if I was being cruel by holding on to it, by keeping this secret like a loaded gun in my pocket. I thought about kindness. I thought about family. I thought about the baby coming and how I wanted to be a grandmother who was welcomed, not just tolerated. But kindness without boundaries is just an invitation, and I have been invited to leave my own home long enough. Then I reach into the inner pocket of my cardigan. The paper is folded into thirds, crisp and yellowed at the edges. The original embossed feel catches the firelight, and the ink, though faded, is still legible. I have carried this document for 37 years. It has moved with me from the old house to this one, from the top drawer of my dresser to the safe deposit box and back again. It has survived 2 moves, 3 surgeries, 1 funeral, and 100 sleepless nights when I wondered if I should just give up and let them have everything. I walked toward the coffee table where Mark used to build Lego towers that scraped the ceiling, the coffee table where I set Thomas's coffee mug every morning for 42 years. The mug is gone now. Lisa threw it out last spring because it had a chip. She said it was an eyesore. I found the pieces in the trash and kept them in a Ziploc bag in my sewing nook. I am not a sentimental woman, but some things deserve to be remembered. Lisa watches me with her arms still crossed, her smirk firmly in place. She thinks I am fetching my purse. She thinks I am leaving. I can see the relief already softening her shoulders, the tension draining from her jaw. She probably thinks I am going to pack a bag and call a cab and disappear into the night like a defeated villain in a movie. I set the document down on the coffee table and smooth it with my palm. The paper whispers against the wood, a sound like old secrets finally speaking, like the house itself exhaling. Lisa frowns and asks what it is. Her voice is wary now, the smirk wavering at the edges. I tell her to read the top line. I say it gently, almost kindly. She picks up the paper and her eyes move left to right, left to right. The smirk falters. Her eyebrows draw together. She reads the words aloud, slowly, as if the language is foreign to her, as if the letters are rearranging themselves on the page. Deed of trust, dated 1987. Before she was born, I say. Before Mark was born, actually. I was 23 years old when I signed this, 23 and terrified and absolutely certain of one thing. I had just married Thomas, and my father had sat me down in his study, the one with the leather chairs and the smell of pipe tobacco, and told me that a woman without her own name on her own house was a woman without a country. He was a hard man, my father, but he was not wrong. Lisa's finger traces down the page to the names, grantor and grantee, both of them me. She reads them twice, then a third time, then a fourth, as if repetition will change the letters into something else, something that includes her. I explain that the house was never in Thomas's name. It was never in hers, not after the gift I gave them for the wedding. A life estate, I called it, a wedding present wrapped in legal language and tied with a ribbon of good faith. I tell her that a life estate means they have the right to live here as long as I allow it, as long as certain conditions are met. I tell her that I thought I would never need to enforce those conditions. I tell her that I was wrong. Her face goes pale and then red, the blush rising from her collarbone to her hairline like a fever. Her chest rises and falls rapidly. She calls me a liar. Her voice is high and tight, and her hands are shaking now. The diamond rattles against the paper. She says I am making it up, that I am a bitter old woman who cannot stand to see anyone else happy. I point to section 4, paragraph 2. My fingernail taps the paper as I read the line aloud. My voice is steady. I have practiced this moment in my head 100 times. Upon failure to provide a harmonious living environment for the original grantor, the life estate shall immediately revert in full to the grantor's revocable trust. She slams the paper down on the coffee table. The sound is loud in the quiet room, a sharp crack that makes Mark look up from his phone again. She says that is not enforceable. She says no judge would uphold something so cruel. She says I am an old woman playing games, that I am trying to control her from beyond the grave that is not even dug yet. I tell her it was drafted by Walter, Frick, and Haynes, the same firm that handles the mayor's estate and half the judges in this county. I tell her that the senior partner, old man Walter himself, was my father's best friend and my godfather. He bounced me on his knee when I was a baby. He held my hand at my father's funeral. He wrote this document specifically to withstand exactly the kind of challenge she is threatening. She can call them, I say. She can call them right now if she wants. But it is 9 o'clock and they will not pick up until morning. I pause and let the wait settle. I have waited 3 years for this moment. I can wait a few more hours. Then I reach into my other pocket and pull out a second document, cream-colored paper with clean edges, typed in a font so formal it feels like a verdict. The paper is crisp and new, not yellowed like the deed. I had it printed just last week after Lisa told me at dinner that I was a guest in her home and should start acting like one. I ate my soup in silence that night, but I made a phone call the next morning. I unfold the document and lay it beside the deed. The eviction notice, I tell her, pre-signed, just needs a date. I point to the blank line where the date will go. I point to the signature line where my own name is already written in blue ink. I tell her that I can fill in tomorrow's date, or today's, or I can put the document back in my pocket and pretend this conversation never happened, if she is willing to apologize and leave my sewing nook alone. The room goes absolutely still. The fire pops and a log shifts, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. The clock on the mantel ticks. I had forgotten it was there. It is Thomas's father's clock, a great wooden thing that chimes every hour. It has been silent for years because no one remembered to wind it. Tonight it ticks. I do not know who wound it. Maybe the house did it itself. Mark looks up from his phone. His mouth opens and closes and opens again, but no sound comes out. He looks like a fish on a dock, gasping and flopping and utterly useless. His thumb hovers over the screen, frozen mid-scroll. For once, he has nothing to say. For once, his phone cannot save him. Lisa stares at the paper, then at me, then at the walls and the rug and the chandelier and the bay window and the crown molding, all the thousand small pieces of her kingdom, suddenly not hers at all. She looks at the coffee table where she has hosted book club meetings and wine nights and holiday parties. She looks at the fireplace where she hangs her Christmas stockings, the ones with their names embroidered in gold thread. She looks at the front door where she has greeted her mother and her friends and her sister, always introducing herself as the lady of the house, always emphasizing the word lady as if she inherited a title. Her voice cracks when she speaks. It is the first time I have heard her sound like anything other than a woman in complete control. There is a tremor in it, a wobble. She says I cannot do this. She says they have a baby coming, that I would not throw out my own son and my own grandchild. She says I am not that kind of person. She says I am better than this. I fold the deed back into thirds and slip it into my cardigan. The paper settles against my heart like a second skin. I can feel the embossed seal through the fabric, a small circle of authority pressing into my chest. It feels warm now, as if the fire has heated it. I tell her I can and I will, unless we have a conversation about respect. I look at Mark, really look at him, and he flinches again. His eyes are wet now. Good. He should be wet-eyed. He should have been wet-eyed 3 years ago when Lisa first started taking down my photographs and replacing them with her abstract art. He should have been wet-eyed when she painted over the handprints he made in the garage when he was 5 years old. And about the sewing nook, I add. The sewing nook stays. The northern light stays. The rosemary stays. Those are not negotiable. I turn toward the hallway that leads to the garden door, to the northern light, to the little room with the Singer sewing machine and the lace curtains and the window box where I grow rosemary in the spring. The hallway where Mark took his first steps, holding on to the wall with his tiny fingers, his face a mask of concentration. The hallway where Thomas used to sneak up behind me and wrap his arms around my waist and whisper that he loved me in a voice meant only for my ears. I pause at the threshold. The firelight flickers behind me, casting my shadow long across the floor. I am not a tall woman, but my shadow stretches all the way to the front door. It stretches past Lisa's feet and past the coffee table and past the sofa where my son sits with his phone in his lap. It touches the door and keeps going. I tell them I will be in my room. When they are ready to speak like adults, they know where to find me. I do not slam the door. I do not raise my voice. I simply leave. The fire crackles behind me. Lisa says nothing. Mark says even less. I hear Lisa's breath catch, a small hiccup of a sound, and then the rustle of fabric as she sinks onto the sofa. The leather creaks under her weight, the same creak it made when Thomas used to sit down after a long day. I do not turn around. I walk down the hallway, my slippers whispering against the hardwood. Behind me, I hear a sharp intake of breath, then a sob, then the sound of Mark's voice finally waking up. He says her name, Lisa, just once. She tells him not to touch her. She tells him this is his fault. She tells him he should have warned her. Then a door slams somewhere upstairs. I do not know which door. It does not matter. The house knows. The house always knows. I keep walking. The sewing nook is dark when I enter. The garden window reflects my face back at me, ghostly and pale. I look older than I feel. My hair is gray now, thinner than it used to be. The lines around my eyes have deepened, but my hands are steady. My hands have always been steady. I turn on the small lamp by the window, the one with the stained glass shade that Thomas bought me from a flea market in Pennsylvania. The colors throw red and blue and gold across the walls, across the sewing machine, across the window box where the rosemary waits. He paid $5 for that lamp. He was so proud of himself. He carried it all the way home on the train, holding it in his lap like a baby. The northern light is gone for now, but I know it will return tomorrow. It always does. The sun does not care about deeds or evictions or screaming daughters-in-law. It rises anyway. It has been rising for billions of years, and it will keep rising long after Lisa and I and this whole house are dust. There is comfort in that. I sit down at the singer and run my fingers over the brass plate. My mother's machine, her mother's before that. The wood is worn smooth in places where hands have rested for generations. The wheel turns with a soft whir when I test it. The needle is still threaded from the last time I used it 3 days ago when I was hemming a dress for a neighbor's daughter. The girl is getting married next spring. She asked me to make her veil. I said yes without hesitation. That is the kind of woman I want to be, the kind who says yes to the right things and no to the wrong ones. I pull the deed from my cardigan one more time and lay it on the small table beside the thread spools. The paper looks smaller now, less imposing, just words on a page. But words have power. I learned that from my father, who was a lawyer, and from my mother, who was a reader of novels, and from Thomas, who was a man of few words, but the right ones. He once told me that the most powerful word in the English language is no. I did not understand him then. I do now. Thomas's voice echoes in my memory. We were sitting on this very sofa, the one with the sagging cushion, and he was holding my hand. His fingers were swollen with arthritis, but his grip was still warm. He asked if I was sure about keeping the house in my name only. He said it was a hard thing, holding on so tight. He said marriage was supposed to be about letting go. He said he trusted me completely, but he wondered if I trusted him. I had looked at him then, this man I loved more than I knew how to say, and I told him it was not about holding on. It was about making sure no one mistook kindness for weakness. I told him that I trusted him with my life, but the world was not always kind to widows, and I needed to know that I would be safe if he went first. He had laughed and kissed my forehead and called me a fierce one. Then he had asked me to pass the remote. We watched a Western that night. He fell asleep halfway through. I watched the rest by myself, his head on my shoulder, his breathing slow and even. I thread the needle. The motion is automatic, muscle memory. My fingers know what to do even when my heart is pounding. I do not have anything to sew tonight, but I sit there anyway, running the needle through a scrap of fabric, back and forth, back and forth. The rhythm is calming. It reminds me of breathing. It reminds me of the ocean, though I have not seen the ocean in 20 years. Outside, the wind picks up, and the garden window rattles gently in its frame. The rosemary in the window box sways. I will have to bring it inside before the first frost. That is something to do tomorrow, something to look forward to. Upstairs, I hear footsteps pacing back and forth, back and forth. Then a muffled argument, voices rising and falling like waves. I cannot make out the words, but I recognize the tones. Lisa's voice is sharp and fast, a machine gun of accusation. Mark's voice is low and pleading, the voice of a man who has spent too many years apologizing for things that are not his fault. Then a third sound I have never heard before, Mark yelling, actually yelling. The walls vibrate, a picture falls somewhere. I hear glass break. Then silence. Complete, total, profound silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the world is catching its breath. I keep sewing. The needle punches through fabric, steady and rhythmic and patient. The scrap is small, just a square of muslin, but I keep going, back and forth, back and forth. Each stitch is a small promise to myself. I have all night. I have had all the nights for 3 years. I can have a few more. I can have as many as I need. The house settles around me the way old houses do, with creaks and sighs and small shiftings. It knows me. It has known me longer than anyone else in this room. It remembers my tears and my laughter and the way I danced in the kitchen when Thomas brought me flowers for no reason. It remembers Mark as a baby and as a boy and as a young man leaving for college, his duffel bag over his shoulder, his smile wide and hopeful. It remembers Thomas's footsteps on the stairs and the way he always missed the third step from the top every single time for 42 years. The house is mine. It always was. I pull the scrap of fabric from the machine and examine my stitches, even and straight, not a single wobble. The muslin is soft under my fingers, worn from handling. I fold it into a small square and set it aside. Some things, I think, do not weaken with time. Some things only get stronger. Some things, like this house, like my resolve, like the love I have for the people who live under this roof, even when they do not deserve it, only deepen with age. I fold the deed one more time. I slip it back into my cardigan, close to my heart. Then I turn off the lamp and sit in the dark, listening to the wind and the silence and the slow, steady beat of my own pulse. The stained glass shade glows faintly, even without the light. The colors are muted now, almost black, but I can still see them, red and blue and gold, the colors of a sunset, the colors of a bruise, the colors of a promise. Tomorrow we will talk. Tomorrow we will sit down at the kitchen table, the one where Thomas and I shared 1,000,000 meals, and we will have the conversation we should have had 3 years ago. We will talk about respect and boundaries and what it means to share a home. We will talk about the baby and what kind of grandmother I want to be. We will talk about the sewing nook. But tonight I rest. Tonight I let the house hold me the way I have held it for all these years. I close my eyes. The fire has died down to almost nothing, just a faint glow beneath the ash. The clock on the mantel keeps ticking. Thomas's father's clock, alive again for reasons I do not understand. The wind picks up outside. The garden window rattles. The rosemary sways. I smile in the dark. Then I open my eyes, stand up, and walk to the window. I look out at the garden, at the bare branches of the oak tree, at the moon hanging low and full over the fence. The light spills across the grass, silver and cold. I think about my mother. I think about my grandmother. I think about all the women who came before me, who held on to things when the world told them to let go. I think about the diamond on Lisa's finger, and I wonder if she will ever know what it means. I think about the deed in my pocket, and I wonder if I will ever need to use the eviction notice. I hope not, but I am ready if I do. I turn away from the window and walk to the door. I pause with my hand on the frame. The sewing nook will be here tomorrow. The northern light will return. The rosemary will keep growing. I step into the hallway and walk toward the stairs. The house creaks under my feet, but it is a friendly sound, a welcoming sound, the sound of a home that knows its owner is still here.